The first thing I remember the most was when I was in second grade and we were studying dinosaurs. And one of the teacher assistants came up to me and she's like, okay, here's a block of clay. Make a dinosaur. And so I saw this Stegosaurus dinosaur that was like a plastic form that was in front of the. And so I thought, all right, I'll make a Stegosaurus dinosaur. And it looked pretty good for a second grader. It was the first time that I had like a piece of art in an art show. I remember, seeing it displayed and stuff. And then after that, I went through like this phase of like making all kinds of clay dinosaurs. I made like a brontosaurus and a T-Rex, and because then I was like all into dinosaurs. And then I don't know, for some reason, like with my creativity, the way it worked is like it was kind of like once I, like got it all out and I made all the stuff, and then I was like, okay, I'm done. And then I would move on to like the next thing with creativity.
That's fun. I've always been creative. I remember when I was just a little kid, there was always something around the house that was being done. My grandmother was a seamstress, and my grandfather was a woodworker on my mom's side. And on my dad's side, my grandfather worked with metals and wiring, and he would make electric lamps out of old oil lamp. And my grandmother painted china. There's an author in the family. My whole family was just creative people. And so there was never a time when creativity wasn't part of my basically every day. And I can remember looking forward to my aunt and all my cousins would come over and we would be together creating ornaments for our Christmas tree that year. And so it was just always something that was going on, and always been drawing, and always been coloring with something. And I feel pretty fortunate that creativity has been a part of my everyday. So it's always interesting to hear how other people relate to that word of creativity and what it means to you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had like two parts. My mom was not one to encourage like the creativity, but her mother, my Mimi, would always like encourage like creativity. We even made things like clay out of like salt and flour. And I also got into this different phase, like where I went through the clay dinosaur phase, and then I went through this phase where I took these, it's like these weeds from outside, and they had these little balls that would have the stem, next to it. And I'd make like heads out of the balls, and then I would make birds and
Oh,
things like
cool.
that, making things like that I would find in nature.
I'm wondering, how a lot of times you'll hear artists talk about hitting a point where you feel like you're in the flow, like time disappears and you're just totally in the moment and creativity becomes more magical. It's not just making something, there's a magical spiritual aspect coming through.
Well, that's where I feel like it's like a meditation where it's like you are getting that connection to God, source, creator energy.
Yeah.
Like you're in that flow because you are like part of that energy of creator. And I believe that because, like you're in that mode of creating something, it's like you're expressing like creator's energy. And that's what feels so wonderful. And just when you're in, like that flow of making art, that's like a meditative state right there.
Yeah, and I've noticed that other kinds of people are also using that same terminology of being in the flow. Like sports figures, when they're like in the zone, they call it in the zone or in the flow. I think it can be translated into other things, other activities that we do, just depending upon like who we are and how we like to creatively express ourselves. It could be cooking or caring for someone, just I think that state is reachable in other ways. But
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I always felt like, it's like you're all of a sudden in a different space, like you're separate,
Dimension.
yeah, a different dimension, separate from normal reality or whatever. And you're so connected that things are just, ideas are popping and you're just playing. It's a playful state. But then there was a day when I was getting into my work and suddenly I felt more like a tool, like I was the brush in a way. not
Yeah.
not the person creating the thing, but the conduit for the this thing to be born. Does that make sense? Have you felt?
Absolutely, yes, because I think that's, like, a really good way to express that because it's like you are, like, stepping into creator's energy, and you're flowing with that, and you're just being, like, what I call the fingers of God, and to, like, express that, that vision, that idea, that impulse.
I like that, the fingers of God.
Yeah, there's like that one, what was it in the Sistine Chapel where it's like the fingers, where it's like they touch, where it's
Right?
like, and I feel like that's an expression of like fingers of God. You have like that creativity that is expressed through you.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like it comes from, like our creator, God,
Mhm.
source. It doesn't matter what you call it, it's all the same. But it's like you allow the channels to open up and express, like that creativity. And the thing about it is, it doesn't have to necessarily start while you're making it, but it's also like setting forth like the intention, like you want to express this. And you can allow the ideas to flow before you even start making it, where it's
Mhm.
like I had like visions of like before I got started making something, I would have visions of like how it's going to be. And then it's like then the next phase is kind of like putting, like it into physical reality.
Right. And that's right there in a nutshell why I call myself a visionary artist, because a lot of my art comes from having a vision, like during meditation or whatever, you have a vision come to you, an idea is planted inside of you. And then I go and I try my best to paint that vision. It's never the same as what you see in your mind's
I
eye.
know, right? I was just gonna say that.
It's never the same.
It isn't.